There's nothing out there for
I don't know.
down to bare ground, but
There is some refugia. Not everything, we didn't accomplish 100% black on any of the acres we burned this year. It's not really our objective when we're setting our fires. So there's gonna be some refugia. Now, effect that has on the whippoorwill, I need to take a look. I can't tell you I know right now.
that's another species. Needs special consideration.
It does.
The oak grassland unit though, do you have a different objective or regime as far as fire frequency?
Oh, okay, yes, so fire frequency matters. So the average fire return interval in eastern hardwood forest is somewhere between every 7 to 12 years. It varies a little bit, but that's about the target, right? So that's how frequently fire maybe ought to have been out there for a healthy ecosystem and ecosystem maintenance. That's for managing a healthy fire adapted ecosystem. We're not there right now. So right now we're in getting to that phase. And so my view is that, when we have fuel on the ground that we can spend like a savings account, we save it up over 3 to 5 years or so, and we're going to burn it to accomplish an objective to get to that maintenance phase. So we probably need to be burning more frequently than ultimately we want to be burning just to get to that phase. So fire frequency or fire return interval does matter a lot.
Speaking of species, I've heard a lot about quail.
Yep.
And we would like to see more, or many people in the public would like to see more quail. Is there an opportunity with this recovery to create better habitat that quail might like?
Quail, bobwhite quail, northern bobwhite do use woodland habitats. They would use the oak grassland habitat. That was a target sort of for that management prescription. And so the answer is yes. They will eat acorns. They will make use of seeds from the grasses and forbs that grow under a forest canopy. It's in some ways it's almost maximizing the habitat availability. So when you've got early successional habitat stacked under a forest canopy, you've got all of the forested canopy habitat that's available, but you also have components of early successional habitat that are available on the same acre. So northern bobwhite do use woodland habitats and will benefit from opening up the overstory and getting more early successional components scattered throughout the forest. So the answer is yes, it should.
One comment with that, Chris, though, is with the tornado damages it sits now, from a wildlife standpoint, I foresee, if there are quail in the landscape, really benefiting for the first few years until that succession or whatever reforestation starts to take place to not make a suitable habitat for quail. But the next few years would be kind of the primo, in my mind, habitats for quail.
So on that point, I think that if we can get some prescribed burning through there to start working back some of that woody competition that's going to grow in there, that'll do a couple things. It's going to favor the desirable species, the oaks, and to a lesser degree the hickories, but it's also going to help manage the briars and the brambles and all the other stuff that grows in there, so it doesn't turn into a thicket as fast as it would without fire on the landscape. It might prolong that suitable habitat for bobwhite and a little bit longer while we get things reforested.
that's one thing I think the quail need help a lot.
Yeah.
Well, do need help a lot.
Would that require us like bringing them in?
No.
Quail cubbies here, there are.
The last time I saw it, I was on helping with a graduate project when I was in college, and I think we released something like 5,000 quail. And I don't know that 10 of them survived. It's not been a successful model. You can't take Penrod quail and release them in the wild. They're popcorn on the landscape for everything that wants to eat a quail. So.
One time elk and bison area was managed as a quail habitat area.
But no reason why it couldn't be. I think the habitat's there, and all those large herbivores might have some disturbance factor on them that makes them less successful in there. I don't know that for sure.
That was before it was Elkin Bison, though, when it was
Okay.
managed as the Hell Quail Habitat area.
Quail need massive areas, for the figure 10,000 acres of good core habitat to have healthy populations. And it's big landscapes that they need. And if you can't get big landscapes, then you need corridors of connecting habitat from one suitable habitat to the next. They're a lot. They really are.
It's like an extreme of some of the, well, all species is what do they need throughout their life?
Mhm.
And it's, and then annually, what do they need? But it's gotta be enough space and time for that, but. And then, just one thing to interject too, is when we're talking about different species is individuals versus the population.
Mhm.
So a lot of these species, like the whippoorwill would be an example, need open conditions. How do you get those open conditions? Prescribed burn, get those open conditions. That might impact an individual, but the overall population benefits. So is any mortality that happens from the management activity, is it adding to the existing mortality, or is it compensating and improving conditions for like whatever animals you got out there are they gonna have great grandchildren? That's how you have to think.
Yeah.
So, we've done some things before is, well, if we don't do this work, say it's an endangered species, needs some work. If we don't do this work, these ones that are here right now are dead. They just don't know it yet.
Right.
Are they gonna have great grandchildren that have great grandchildren? And so on and so on. And that's where you gotta think about the population over an individual.
So back when I was a fire management officer / wildlife biologist here, I conducted an analysis for a biological evaluation for formal consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the Indiana bat. And, so we were proposing things to hopefully help the bat populations in Tobacco Port Cave. It was Indiana bat at that time, which is the other side of LBL down south end. And so I conducted an analysis of fire tolerance or fire adaptation to every threatened, endangered, and sensitive species, flora and fauna that we've got here on LBL. So we've got about 100, a little over 100 species that, they're the rarest and falling off the edge of the earth type stuff. And what I think I discovered was about 75% of those had some very firm fire adaptation. They needed fire on the landscape to survive. The other biggest portion of those were insulated by life habit from fire. So 75% of them, if you put fire on the ground, the populations do better. It might impact individuals, but population as a whole improves on the landscape, has a better chance. The other percentage, something like 20-odd%, were insulated from fire. They grew in moist areas, they grew along creeks, some cases in the water, areas that did not, weren't, usually impacted by the types of fires that this landscape should have. And so their populations were stable in a high fire regime. Another percentage, I honestly can't remember. It was stuff like interior least tern, who's not nesting or living in any kind of habitat that would ever burn. So stuff that's utterly insulated.
Talk about, loblolly pine is invasive, and you mentioned, autumn olive,
Mm-hmm.
but like, what about others like tree of heaven or, kudzu or?
We have a number, and so that's a great question. So should we focus just on loblolly pine, or should we also focus an EA on autumn olive, Sericea lespedeza, Bradford / Calorie pear, tree of heaven, kudzu? So should we target all of those non-native invasive species that are affecting our landscape? It's a good question. We got a number of them.
Some of those other ones you don't have a whole lot of either, but.
We don't have a lot of kudzu. We don't have a lot of tree of heaven. We've got a ton of Sericea, a ton of loblolly. We've got a big handful of calorie pear. I could probably deal with the calorie pair in a week, honestly. So now give me a year and it's gonna take me a month. It's pretty nasty.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but pre-COVID, didn't prisoners come in and help more with efforts around here? And,
Unknown to me.
okay, I thought possibly. I didn't know if that was something that was looked into to help.
I think it was in the counties more so than it was in the area here, I think.
Yeah,
Well, they've come back straight, they're helping more where I live.
we tried person trail work.
Yeah.
There was logistics and just everything piled into that effort. We just didn't have the resources to ever get that off the ground.
When I was working as district ranger up North Arkansas, we had a great working relationship with our local state prison, and the prison crew was out working for us. It seemed like once a week through the summer, and they did trail maintenance, they did rec area maintenance, they did a lot of work for us. So it's not off the wall. We can take another look at it. I will say this, some states have legislation, it's a non-competition clause, so we need to be cautious and cognizant of that and make sure that we're in line with the law.
Mentioned contracts before, an agreement or whatever, how about the LBLA agreement? Is that in progress or working on? Where is that, or?
We're not in progress, other than we've had some conversations about what we want to see in the new agreement. And there's a lot of details in that thing. They do a lot of work for us, so we want to get it right and want to capture it all. Right, wrong, or otherwise, my partnership coordinator is currently on a temporary detail, and I think he's done in maybe less than a month now.
May 5th.
Yeah, May 5th, so around a month.
Okay.
As soon as he gets back, it's his first and number one thing on his radar. He's going to begin on that. But we have been talking, so we're not going into it empty-handed and blind. It should be a good process, fairly quick. Now, that being said, and as you well know, so Elaine and I will do the lion's share of the negotiating back and forth on the agreement with, input from our staffs. But in addition to this advisory board, she has a board of trustees that have to approve that agreement ultimately as well. So
Is that like one master contract or
one master agreement. Yep.
which covers everything?
Everything would do for the next 5 years.
Okay, I got you.
Cleo Griffin's house?
Leo Griffin's house. So for those of you that aren't aware, David, if I could trouble you, could you just share the quick history on the Cleo Griffin house?
Cleo Griffin was the last person to live over here. And he was a veteran of World War II, had what you used to call shell shock. And when TVA was moving everybody out, they would move him and he'd keep coming back. And finally the VA intervened and they let him stay. And he lived there until finally they had to put him in a nursing home.
Now, the tail end of that, I heard differently. I heard that it was Department of Defense.
Maybe it was.
That weighed in.
I never have figured out why, because there were lots of others like, there were several wounded veterans and things and some of them, they bulldozed their house, put them in jail.
I was heard the federal judge allowed it. I don't know.
Right.
And the federal judge could have been in Paducah, it could have been in Nashville because it was in Tennessee,
Right.
but Golden Pond's in Kentucky, so it could have been in Paducah federal. I don't know where it was, but it was federal judge is what I always heard.
I never knew.
But I don't know.
never
I've
knew how
never
that
seen the
worked out.
paperwork or anything.
So to contextualize this story a little bit. So these young men from Land Between the Rivers went to Europe and were fighting against the Nazi regime, which was actively taking people's land from them and colonizing other countries. They came back only to discover that their own government was taking their land from them. It was traumatic, to say the least. And Cleo Griffin's house is still standing down just south of the home place on Land Between the Lakes. And so there's a lot of interest in preserving that. for that story. And I have concerns with that because I don't have concerns with the story or, you know, the presence of the house. I just want to know what the plan is. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to restore that house and preserve it if the story doesn't go along with it, you know, because we'll rebuild